Federal Sports Minister Anika Wells is a no-show at this year's Winter Olympics in Italy. She's having a well-earned rest after taking out gold in last year's parliamentary travel expenses scandal. And she did very well to win that because it was a highly competitive field. Instead of attending the Winter Olympics, she's issued a statement wishing our Olympians well, or more accurately, some of our Olympians. Here's the statement. I'm fascinated by the way it began. She says, a record percentage of female athletes will lead Australia's Olympic team at the 2026 Winter Olympic Games. This team features 33 female athletes representing 62% of the team, marking the highest proportion of women for any Australian Winter or Summer Games team. Really? That's the headline? That 62% of our Olympic team is women? Well, doesn't that mean women are overrepresented? What I don't understand is how underrepresentation is a problem, but overrepresentation, well, that's something to be celebrated. Now, personally, I couldn't care less about the gender tally. It's the medal tally that I think most Australians care about. And much as Labor would like there to be, there's no gold medals on offer for diversity. Speaking of the Labor Party, here's a bunch of female MPs celebrating the government's freeze on the tap beer tax by drinking from cans. The tax freeze is on tap beer, not canned beer. They don't even understand their own policy. Or maybe they do, they're just hoping you don't. And imagine partying because a tax hasn't been removed, it's just been momentarily delayed. Scrap the tax completely, then we could all have a drink. While Labor women were busy misinterpreting tax policy by promoting alcohol consumption on parliamentary premises, the PM was defending another woman. Can you believe it? Susan Lee.
Last week, The Nightly published a piece by Aaron Patrick under the headline, Why I Wouldn't Marry Susan Lee. That headline is a disgrace, and the article is no better. I don't intend to quote from it any further. You really only need to know one thing about it. That article would never have been written about a male political leader. One of the lessons I would hope that this parliament and those who observe it have learnt from Julia Gillard's time as Prime Minister is that it is not enough to shake our heads at this stuff in private. As leaders, we have a responsibility to call it out, and today, as Prime Minister, I call it out.
Now, a lot of people criticised Aaron Patrick's article about Susan Lee. I'm not here to defend it, but I was surprised the Prime Minister felt the need to stand up in Parliament and mansplain why it was wrong. Surely there's more pressing issues right now than an article most Australians never read. Here's the Macpherson angle on that little speech. Anthony Albanese wasn't defending Susan Lee from sexism in an online article so much as planting a narrative. If Susan Lee gets rolled by Angus Taylor next month or in the next few weeks, it'll be an act of sexism. Consider the groundwork laid. He's not calling out Aaron Patrick so much as calling out Angus Taylor ahead of time. This is a continuation of a narrative he's been carefully curating for a while now.
On Thursday, where you had a funeral to farewell Katie Allen, who was well respected, not just in the Liberal Party but across the board, and a bunch of blokes, organised by a bloke who couldn't hold his own seat, Michael Sukkar, sitting in a house somewhere in Melbourne, plotting to knock off the first female leader of the Liberal Party.
He's not defending Susan Lee's honour, he's defending Susan Lee's position because he'd prefer her to remain as the opposition leader, unpopular as she is. And as for his lecture on learning from Julia Gillard about standing up for women, let's not forget it was Gillard's government that removed the definition of woman from the Sex Discrimination Act, creating a world where any old man can declare himself a female. Every time the PM talks about standing up for women's rights, the inevitable question arises. So what is a woman, Anthony Albanese? And that question will hang there unanswered until someone undoes Gillard's folly and restores woman to its literal meaning. So while we're on the subject, what is a woman? Now, if you answered that a woman is anyone who says he is, congratulations, you're now qualified to be a Victorian Labor MP. Let me ask you an obvious follow-up question. If a woman is anyone who says he is, what is a woman in a female prison? If you answered that a woman in a female prison is a duck, as in a sitting duck, then congratulations, you've twice as many firing neurons as your average Victorian Labor MP, which is to say you have at least one. Labor MPs, drunk on the idea that they could be so inclusive as to let lads become ladies, rearrange society with all the foresight of a drunk IKEA shopper who has none of the instructions. And last week we learned the inevitable result. The Victorian government quietly made a secret compensation payout to a female prisoner who was sexually assaulted by a murderer, a man placed in a women's prison because he identified as a woman. Now, if that weren't grotesque enough, Jacinta Allen still refuses to commit to ensuring it never happens again. Now, with that in mind, you'd think the Victorian Premier would be a little, I don't know, circumspect this week. But here she was on social media today, posting a photo of herself with former AFL player and public bisexual Mitch Brown. She wrote, and I quote, "You'll probably know Mitch Brown from his time playing footy for the West Coast Eagles. Last year he made history as the first ever AFL player to come out as bisexual. Mitch's courage and strength sparked conversations, but more importantly, it started a shift, and that matters." No one, and I mean no one, cares that a bloke who played a handful of largely forgettable games a decade ago has recently come out as bisexual. But if you believe the Premier of Victoria, well, this is seismic. She continued, "He's proof that when you stand up for your values and inspire others to do the same and take pride in who they are, equality isn't negotiable and respect isn't up for debate." Now, this is the part where I really get annoyed. Stand up for values. Respect isn't up for debate. Well, what about respect for female prisoners who would rather not be sexually assaulted by a bloke allowed in there because the Labor government values ideological inclusion more than women's safety? Jacinta Allen finished by saying, and I quote, "People can love who they love, and role models like Mitch are exactly who we need for generations to come." Happy Pride. Men coming out publicly as bisexual are role models we need for generations to come? No disrespect to Mitch Brown, truly, but seriously? Jacinta Allen is grandstanding on a non-issue while the state of Victoria decays and while women in Victoria's prisons quietly wonder if they'll be next. I got to say, I was not only startled by that, but I was truly startled this weekend to read in the Daily Telegraph that New South Wales health inspectors had actually shut down 5 shops selling vapes and illicit tobacco. Why was I surprised? Well, because Jacinta Allen's Victorian Labor government has been carefully cultivating the idea that closing illegal tobacco stores is some Herculean task. In Victoria, we were told last week that 14 inspectors had been dispatched to patrol roughly 10,000 tobacco stores. But the notion of actually shutting even one of them down, well, that's still a maybe someday let's see kind of affair. Enter Victorian Corrections Minister McEnroe.
In terms of closure laws, I am, and I can confirm today, that I'm having a very close look at developing our own closure laws and seeing if that is possible.
Ah, yes, the Victorian government is now having a close look to see if they can do something that other states, New South Wales, Queensland and South Australia, have been doing while eating their morning toast. It's classic Victorian Labor, taking a close look at doing something everybody else already is. Because why rush when you can deliberate endlessly? One more thing before we get to my panel. See the story last week about a kid who was pestering tennis legend John McEnroe for an autograph? 14-year-old Logan kept asking and asking until McEnroe, who was trying to catch a flight, finally snapped and told the teenager to F off. Now, of course, it made headlines around the world. No one, least of all a public figure, should speak to a kid like that. But here's what got my attention this morning. Logan was in the newspapers saying he'd really like an apology from John McEnroe. Have a listen.
It's not good for me to hear somebody tell me to go F myself from an adult. It's pretty hurtful, especially from a name like John McEnroe. I expect a bit more.
Kid, you expected more from a man like John? You can't be serious, McEnroe.
Look, you can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
Someone needs to tell 14-year-old Logan that he got off lightly. And rather than be disappointed, be encouraged. You actually got the full John McEnroe experience.